Hello and welcome to the Bestseller Experiment, where we continue to discover what makes a bestseller and inspire you to start, finish and publish your book. I'm Mark DeVoe.
And I'm Mark Stay, and as always, a whopping great thanks to everyone who keeps this podcast on the road. That includes our academates on the Bestseller Academy and our patrons over on Patreon. If you want to get access to hundreds of hours of extra material, including a very good chat with our special guest today, then pop over to bestsellerexperiment.com/support, and you can find out how you get access to all these extra deep dives and extra episodes. If you want to get into the Academy and have me and Mr. D as your tutors, can you imagine such a thing? Pop to academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. Links are all in the show notes. Mr. D, how are you today?
Oh, I'm so excited about today's interview, Mark. I'm absolutely buzzed. But before we dive in, I need to tell you a very quick story, which our guests might be able to help me with today, because I was putting out the bins earlier, the wheelie bins. And in my rush to get to this interview, I decided to put on my daughter's size 6 Crocs. And now I'm a size 10, 11, right? So that's, you can just imagine me, gravel driveway in these little kind of like pink Crocs. And as I went out the gate, I was pulling the bins through, I pulled the gate and then it kind of sliced the back of my heel off. So, and I haven't looked yet. You know, when you do something like that and it really hurts, and you're just like, I'm just not going to look at that till later. But I might be asking, I guess, how I can reattach it later on. But anyway, I digress. But no, I'm very excited. And this week's been a bit random because a lot of work on the non-fiction project. Great. Again, bit of a link to today's interview. Excellent. Let's dive in and I should just check in with you. You're having a book launch soon, aren't you?
Yeah, but my book's out. We're recording this on Wednesday. Book's out tomorrow. Book launch is on I think it's the 26th, Tuesday the 26th at Waterstones, Canterbury. Link in the show notes. It's all there. But yeah, I'm going to FantasyCon this weekend. The next week or so is just a bit of a blur, frankly. But yeah, lots of fun. Going to be lots of fun. Let's get to our special guest. This is why people have tuned in. Our special guest is none other than Suzie Edge. Suzie Edge trained as a molecular cell biologist before moving to clinical medicine to spend more time talking to people rather than just bugs in test tubes. She worked as a junior doctor and always on the lookout for gory historical details. Suzie loves telling stories of how we have treated our human bodies in life and in death. She's a smash on TikTok. We did a deep dive on that, episode 405, talking about TikTok. I'm sure that's going to come up again and again. I'll put a link in the show notes. Her first book, Mortal Monarchs, was an absolute smash hit, and coming very soon, 28th of September, is Vital Organs. We're going to talk about that, all the future books that are coming. Suzie Edge, welcome to the podcast. How are you today?
Oh, I'm so good, Mark. Thank you so much for inviting me on for a chat.
Oh, we're so excited, aren't we, Mr. D? This is going to be great.
We certainly are, Suzie, and we should also say, Suzie, you've been with the podcast, listener, and a supporter of the podcast for how many years now? Because I remember almost early TikTok days, you were talking about it on the BXP team.
I don't know, because I've probably been back to the beginning of the podcast a couple of times. Genuinely, I go back now and again and have a good giggle at the famous bollocking and all the other, the great. Because it's so inspirational, and it makes me get off my bum and go and do some stuff. It really does, and put that on the back of your book. It makes me get off my bum. I think for us, I've been hanging around for a while.
It's so great though for us to kind of travel with you and journey with you in your author experience. Like we've been going, I guess it's nearly 6 years, isn't it, Mark? Now we're coming up to, and when we first started out, obviously we were just like, giving it large as best we could, but like to have had all of this time now to see all these authors kind of develop in their journey. You've been a massive inspiration within that group of authors, and we're so excited to talk about your new book, because your new book is coming out at the end of this month, isn't it?
It's been a bit of a whirlwind, this one, and I think that's because the first one comes out and it takes a long time, and it feels like even from selling the book to getting it out onto the shelves, it takes forever. And this one, I had the idea the day I handed in the first one, and I phoned my agent, and she's like, "That's lovely. Have you had a cup of tea? Have you sat down?
Do you want to take a day off, maybe?"
Yeah. I was like, "No, let's go." And I had the idea then, and it was a tough slog, because we agreed with the we agreed with the publishers that it was going to be the same time frame, and the book comes out the same day as the first one did last year. And of course, I've got all the other publicity and everything else going on as well, and I'm trying to think about both of them, and that's quite hard to do as well. But yeah, it's called Vital Organs: A History of the World's Most Famous Body Parts, and it's coming out in a couple of weeks.
Well, I was looking at the blurb. It said Louis XIV's rear end inspired the British national anthem. Queen Victoria's armpit led the development of antiseptics. Robert Jenkins' ear started a war. I mean, this is so much fun. These are the little icky bits of history that just fascinate us. So tell us about Louis XIV's rear end, please.
Oh, well, my Google search history is just hilarious. But yeah, Louis XIV had a sort of painful something going on his rear end, and he prodded it and poked it, and it just got worse and worse and turned into an abscess. And from there, the physicians had a look, and they poked it with red hot pokers, and they put poultices on, and they put herbs in, and nothing really helped, and it just got worse, and it turned into a fistula, which is a channel, if you like, from one open bit to another. So he basically developed an extra hole down there, if you get my drift, and it was seeping and very, very sore. And eventually the physicians thought, well, we need help here from the surgeons, the lowly surgeons as they were at the time. They weren't university educated. They were in the streets choppy. And they got a surgeon in, and he had a look between the king's legs and thought, need to do some practice here. So he went off to the streets of Paris, and he found people in the prisons and the hospitals and what have you with similar conditions, and he practiced on them until he developed some tools and an operation. And he went back to the king, and he sat between the king's legs for 3 or 4 hours with no anaesthetic, no antiseptic, and he sort of unroofed this fistula, and he cleaned it all out, and it was a success. And he was given loads of money and loads of land, and he never operated again. So it's the dream, isn't it? Just, So that was that. The surgeons went on to gain a lot more from the king then, and a lot more recognition, and so started to be recognised more. Because that's what you get from recognition, isn't it? And I tell you the story about the anthem, but I can't remember it.
No, you see, that's what we call a teaser. That's what we call a teaser. It's absolutely brilliant.
That's exactly it. Yes, you're right. I did that on purpose. I'm teasing.
Absolutely.
You have to buy the book.
Yes.
Brilliant. Now, there was also something about Hitler's testicle as well, which I know, like, there's something about the Royal Albert Hall. I can't remember the whole thing, but
I'm not going to start singing for you.
No, I was going to say we could all, but I don't actually know the history behind any of that. Is it linked to that? It's just, it is. It's just a story that won't go away, and it was a big propaganda thing. I mean, if you listen to the rest of the story, it goes on to talk about Himmler and Goering as well, I think, and those guys don't come up so much. But yeah, there's this idea that he had lost one either on the Somme when he was injured, or he had been doing something that he shouldn't have been doing with a goat when he was a child and lost it then. And so there's all these stories that, I mean, they get worse and worse, don't they? The more bad things you want to say about somebody, you can talk about what might have happened to his testicle. But of course, there was no evidence in the end because of the way he ended up burned, and actually he was only recognised by a teeth plate and jaw, and the Russians said that he was missing one, but there was nothing there to go on. It's all just propaganda. It's crazy.
Shall we get this back on track? Let's.
It is on track. What are you talking about?
This is absolutely on track. So far we've talked about pain in the arse and a load of bollocks. I mean, it's going.
Yes, we're on course, aren't we? Let's talk about where it all started, because as I understand it, this all started in lockdown for you. You've done a master's degree in modern history. And I think also you were having conversations with your kids about medical history and the gory stuff and horrible histories and things like that. How did that and TikTok lead to the first book, Mortal Monarchs?
I was telling the stories on TikTok, and I was even developing them all. Some of them, they were only 60 seconds long, but I was writing them in a kind of beginning, middle, and end, and tell the story, and really as if I was writing something a lot longer. and they were going down really well. And I do a lot of videos that are behind the scenes kind of things as well. And during lockdown, there was nothing else that I was doing. So I was just doing those. And I mentioned a few times that I was turning it into a book, or I was thinking about a book. I had the idea for Mortal Monarchs whilst I was doing my masters. I was kind of sneaking out the hospital along to the history department because it's a it's a university hospital, and would always be like, "Oh no, I was just with that patient or that theatre or whatever," and I was sneaking about the history. Yeah, so I said on TikTok, I was making videos saying I'd love to turn this into a book, and people were suggesting it, and suggesting a podcast as well. And I said one day that this would be great. I'd love to do this. I'll have to write it and then get it off to agents. And then I was very, very lucky. I landed on my feet because Emily Glenister, who's an agent with DHH in London, sent me a DM one day and said, "Let's talk." And I did, and I signed on the dotted line. And so at that point, the book wasn't written. I had a fair idea, but it wasn't done. And we wrote a proposal and sold on that with a couple of chapters that were, a couple of sample chapters. And that then, I then got the job, if you like, and I sat down and wrote it.
So fiction authors will be listening to this sort of grinding their teeth, because when you write fiction, you generally have to write the whole thing. You have to prove you can write a book before you can sell it to, even show it to an agent. But with nonfiction is very different. Nonfiction very often, and I used to sit in acquisitions meetings at publishers and whatever, you'd get that proposal, which was usually a chapter by chapter breakdown and a couple of sample chapters. Was that the sort of thing that you were pitching to publishers with then?
Yeah, and of course, with a book like Mortal Monarchs, my first one, it's relatively easy to write a chapter breakdown because there was a chapter per monarch. It went back 1,000 years. I didn't have to worry about plot lines or, the inciting incident or anything like that. Or of course, I had to do that within each chapter, but I didn't have to do that for the chapter breakdowns. And so that was fairly easily done. And with a growing online presence as well, that was appealing to them, I suppose. There were a few different ones that were interested, but I ended up with the guys who were really interested in the idea of online publishing, online publicity, etc., which I was really into. So yeah, that's how it went down. And then of course I had to sit down and write the thing, which was terrifying because there's a huge amount of trust from them, isn't there, in that when they say, go for it.
So just to confirm then, so you got a DM from an agent who was interested in working with you. Is that how they came to you rather than you were chasing them?
Yeah, that's how it happens. And my level of guilt is huge. I feel very bad putting it that way. But, sometimes that's the way around it. Some people just aren't the usual send in a manuscript and be found. Some people are found in other ways. And I've been very, very lucky. I mean, there was a bit of hard work in there as well. But
lots of hard work. Yeah, no.
The harder you work, the luckier you get, Suzie. You know that. But I find that fascinating because I always talk about the 99%, which is what everyone does, the traditional route, and then there's the 1% that do it the complete opposite way. And I've often talked about that with in the coaching. It's like if you can get them to come to you, if you've laid down all of the opportunities, you started to kind of work. I mean, I know you've been doing TikTok for 3-4 years now, isn't it? It's 5 years, right? So that it's always like everyone's like, oh, overnight success, and we should also say, I mean, 400. I think I was looking today, it's around 410,000 followers you've now got, which is absolutely bonkers, and it's probably growing. Is it growing exponentially, would you say, now in terms of like growth per day? Or
it varies, but I have a bit of a sort of self formula, if you like. I know what's going to do well, and when I'm in the mood, when I have the time, and when I can face what's coming, because I'll tell you, it's not easy to deal with a viral video. Then I put them out. I put one out a couple of days ago, and therefore I put on 12 or 13,000 in the last 48 hours. So I know that that's going to happen when I do such a video. So I was willing at the weekend to put up, or a couple of days ago, to deal with that. But yeah, you have
to prepare for the viral kind of like tsunami that happens. Wow. Love it.
And there definitely is one, and it can be challenging if I'm not in the mood for it. So I definitely have to be in the mood. But actually, I'll just nip back to what you were saying about my agent getting in touch with me. She did say to me, I know we had this conversation before, Mr. Stay. I said, the first thing she said to me was, "So you want to write?" do you want to write fiction or non-fiction? And I chickened out, actually, and I said non-fiction. I felt like it was chickening out at the time. I didn't say that a few months later when I was writing the bloody thing. But I felt like I was chickening out, and I said non-fiction. But of course, maybe that's a good way around to. I understand far more about the publishing industry now that I could face going at them with fiction.
And just going back to the idea of being lucky or not lucky and all that kind of stuff. I mean, non-fiction editors do operate by scouring social media for rising stars. The number of times we had acquisitions meetings where they would say, look, no one's approached this person. Back then it was usually Facebook groups. They say, look, they got a massive Facebook group and they're talking about parenting, or they're talking about this special kind of food or whatever. And the editor would hunt these people down and approach them and say, look, are you interested in doing a book? And that, like, as you say, comes off the back of the success of, one, your expertise, but also the way that you nurture and interact that community as well. And I know you do see things occasionally in writers groups online where they go, oh no, I don't have a big social media following. If you're writing fiction, it kind of doesn't matter. But if you're writing non-fiction, it was always part of the conversation. They would go, okay, how big's their Facebook group? Is it growing? You know, that kind of thing. So I'm fascinated.
Now he tells me.
Yeah. I'm fascinated to hear about this, the fact that you've now sort of got the gist of when something's going to be big. Is it just the kind of video that you put out that you know is going to be, you know, I'm thinking of almost like bait and fish, you know, you put something in there and all the piranhas come out. So you kind of know what's going to be big now, do you?
Yeah, I don't chase the piranhas, but they do come when the tiny little screw ups. Or the other day I wrote the word Elizabeth. I had a video where I was writing, and you could see what I was writing. I wrote the word Elizabeth, and the H didn't have a big bump at the bottom. It was fairly flat. And the number of people that have told me that I can't spell the word Elizabeth, which is hilarious because it's my middle name.
You're getting trolled on Facebook for your spelling.
Yeah, it's my daughter's middle name. It's my mother's name. It's my grandmother's name. It's my middle name. So, you know, I could spell the word Elizabeth, but that really brought people out. I don't put those in deliberately. But I do leave them sometimes because I think I often do not talk about Lady Jane Grey because that winds people up when they comment. I often kind of miss out certain figures that I know are going to wind people up because people really, really, really want me to talk about their interest, and you know that's cool. But I don't tend to go after the piranhas, but I do know what's popular with my group. And
yeah. And it's your group as well. I mean, everyone's going to say, oh, what's the magic formula, Suzie? But actually, you've learnt about your audience, which is unique to you. If somebody else tried that, it might not work for them. But I find it fascinating that you kind of, you know how the engine works now in so many different working ways. And then, you know, like you say, you have to plan for those big videos. Did you know, Suzie, I was looking up on Amazon today, just checking out the new book listing, which I noticed future books are already listed as well. But I don't know if you know this, but you're currently #1 in royal biography, and the person in second place is Prince Harry with his book Spare. So I'm just wondering, did you know that? Did you know that you're outselling?
No, I've not looked for ages.
I was just wondering if he's actually contacted you.
Who's that? Sorry, who's that?
Yeah,
Harry?
Prince Harry. Yeah, Harry.
It doesn't ring a bell.
I was just wondering if he'd reached out to ask for any sales tips on how to shift more books.
Or maybe some writing tips. You might want to try writing one himself.
Oh, to the tower.
Oh, let's hope time travel doesn't exist. Yeah, it's kind of crazy, isn't it? It's interesting to see where your books on monarchs are showing up.
Yeah, and that actually is another thing that I can influence and manipulate almost my Amazon rankings. Isn't that mad? If I mention a book and say, go to this place on Amazon, then I know that I will, you know, or the first book, Mortal Monarchs, I think it had a front cover 9 months before publication. You know, when we announced it, it went to a #1 bestseller then on Amazon. And then the second one did exactly the same thing. I think that was 8 months before publication. The children's book a couple of weeks ago, that doesn't even have a front cover. That went to a #1 on Amazon on the day we announced it. So yeah, I can I can manipulate that as well. Which is wild. Because we've had this conversation before about how numbers don't really match sales, but I feel like they do for me. You know? I can play with it.
I'm just going to pop out. I've got to post all my books to Suzie so she can recommend them. I'll be back in a minute.
But I do have influence in that regard, and that to me is absolutely wild. I didn't chase that, but that's a product of it. And I get sent I get a book of a week in the post now. They come thick and fast. I've had some people that are getting in touch with me, names that I have followed forever, and I fall off my chair every time. I think, oh, you want my following, do you?
That's
it's nice. Amazing. It's cool. I just feel, it's wild.
Does it all feel a little bit unreal? Does it all feel a little bit?
Yeah, it does. I mean, the thing is, I'm not selling millions of books, but it just, which would feel unreal for sure. But just more than 2 feels unreal to me. It does. It feels very strange because I know, and I'm not about town all the time. I'm not meeting people in London or whatever. I'm sitting in a little cottage in the Highlands watching this all happen. That's the sort of surreal bit.
Brilliant stuff. Now, Suzie, I don't know if you heard on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, but I announced that I was going to be writing a non-fiction book over the next year, which is incredibly scary. But I noticed that you are an avid non-fiction reader as well. And there was a TikTok shelfie, I love that word, about the books on your shelf. So having had a love in non-fiction in terms of your kind of like background reading, did that lead you to be interested in wanting to write non-fiction?
There was a book that I picked up. I was about 14 years old, which says a lot about me, but it was called How We Die. It was by a surgeon called Sherwin B. Newland. It's a New York surgeon. And it just went through the body and all the different ways one can meet one's end. And I thought it was absolutely fascinating. And in a way, that was a book that I recreated in Mortal Monarchs through the lens of all the monarchs. And I fell in love with that. I fell in love with the idea that one could be a surgeon and write in that way. And that was what I wanted to do. So I've definitely ticked that box. That set me off for sure. And then there are so more. I mean, that's you're not the only one to mention that loving with non-fiction. That was just my writing shed shelves, because there's other books around the house that are not necessarily non-fiction. But yeah, I'll often be turning around and taking a book off and looking something up when I'm writing or making a TikTok or whatever.
Yeah. What do you most love about writing non-fiction?
I think it's there's just the sheer surprise and love of finding new things. And I think that's the historian in me as well, just the turning over a page and reading a new story that just makes me go, what? That's amazing. I've got to tell everybody this. I think that's the thing. And
you also have the kind of content you write about. There's such a rich history of topics that you could cover. And I think a lot of non-fiction authors, I think fiction authors as well, are in the same boat, but I think particularly with non-fiction, because there's so much out there in the world and beyond to talk about. How do you choose to focus and drill down on a very, very specific kind of topic for the content of a book?
I think that just comes out of the fact that I am a doctor before a historian. I was a doctor first. I was a medic first. I spent a very long time dealing with human bodies, and in those non-fiction books, most of them are medical, aren't they? I spent a lot of time in there. So that's my main interest. That's the thing that makes me say, wow, and sit up and start telling those stories. Coupled together with history, suddenly it niches down a little bit. And I do have an idea for book number 3, which is coming. And it's, again, it's just that stuff that makes me go, wow, and sit up and want to tell people about it, because I know that other people are going to be like, wow, that's amazing. None of my books are particularly controversial or trying to tell people how to do something, or, this isn't like how to lose weight in 100 different ways. It's none of that. It's just fun stories.
You mentioned with Mortal Monarchs, the chapter structure was essentially you're going through various monarchs through history, so you didn't have to worry too much about an overarching narrative. But with Vital Organs, how did you plan that out, and how did you structure your chapters? Was there an obvious way of planning that one out?
Initially, I did look. There's three different ways I thought about it. The first one was that I'm leaving Britain. Well, there's a lot of British stories in there, and going all around the world. So I thought about doing a trip around the world in 50 body parts. And then I thought chronologically, it became more difficult to do because it wasn't a set. It wasn't a set thing. Things, and the other way, which was more obvious to me, as a previous clinician, was to do it the way I would examine a body, start at the top and work my way down. So that was how I went. I went with, we start at the head and work our way down to the toes.
Excellent stuff. Now, book titles, like we get one shot of book titles. And again, there's usually I remember when Mark and I were trying to, work out the book titles for Back to Reality, we had a spreadsheet, didn't we, Mark, of 200 different ideas. How for you? Obviously with the two books you've written, plus all the other books that have already got names attached to them now, what was your process for that? Was it something that just came to you? Was it something that was a big discussion with the agent, the publisher? Was it a shortlisting process?
The very first running working title for Mortal Monarchs was called How to Kill the King.
Oh.
And I thought that was quite fun until one day I was driving along. I live just right next to Balmoral Castle. And one day I was driving along, listening to The Killers of all things, driving very fast, and had to slam on the brakes when a little old guy with white hair in tweed was walking across the road. And I thought that I was about to drive into the King, or the Prince of Wales as he was. And it went through my head, I'm about to kill the King. And then I thought, oh man, if that actually happened, if I'd hit him,
could you imagine? They
would have been going through my laptop, wouldn't they? They would have been finding all these stories and they would have found this, this file called How to Kill the King and everything. And I thought, I don't know, maybe it's not so great. I have a wonderful WhatsApp group of doctor friends, doctor mum friends. It's very niche, and we would banter all day. And I put it out to them, and they came back with the funniest ideas. And I think it was Mortal Monarchs and Vital Organs were both mine in the end, which I'm really proud of. Both my ideas. So yeah, happy with that.
Talking about royal deaths or potential deaths. Now, in the run-up to the publication of Mortal Monarchs, and this you brought this up on the Bestseller Experiment Facebook group, Her Majesty the Queen died, and you were in a bit of a quandary. And that week must have been, it was bananas for everyone, but doubly so for yourself. Take us through that week. What happened there?
I felt a little bit bad about bringing it up on the BXP group because it was in the morning. She wasn't announced dead yet. And I was all very much me.
No, that's true, isn't it?
It was
I hadn't been announced yet.
What am I going to do? I had been that morning, the 8th of September, I had been on a podcast, a History Hit podcast, and we were having such a giggle talking about these stories. And I put the phone down or said goodbye, the Zoom wave, we did that. And suddenly my phone rang and it was the producers. And I thought, oh, what have I done? I'm in trouble. First reaction to everything, isn't it? And I picked it up and they said, do you know, have you seen the news? I said, I've hardly seen the news. I've been looking at you for the last hour, And they said, just hang fire. Don't announce anything. Don't make your videos. Just wait. Go and watch the news first. And I was really down because, I'd spent years coming up with this idea. And of course, it was on my mind. It was on our minds. I'd had these discussions with the publishers. What are we going to do? And it was very much a question of, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. And suddenly we're teetering at the end of this bridge going down. We got to cross it. How are we going to do that? And of course, there are rules. They weren't allowed to, there are rules after the monarch dies. The publishers, they had to wind their necks in for a bit, as did I. And my box of books, I knew that they were on the way. My editor had said, we've sent you the books, I think a couple of days before. So when they arrived, it was a question of, that's nice, thanks. Opened them on the dining room table with my husband, looked at them and went, that's cool. Can't tell anyone. Have a sniff, but put them back in the box. And it was, so that day, I made a video saying to all these Americans, particularly, who were just like, give us the information, what's happening. And I said, look, I'm not going to make content about the death of the Queen. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to go down that route. I could jump up and down and say, hey, the Queen's dead, buy my book. But I just wasn't in me. It wasn't my way. And I decided to just leave it be. I did make a few videos later on when the death certificate came out, because I thought, well, apart from anything else, it's out there in the world. So if everyone else is commenting on it, then I can as well. What was interesting was, whilst I was making that video about the death certificate, I looked closely at, because I had it behind me in a green screen. I looked closely at it and saw that the guy the doctor who had signed the death certificate was my GP. And
no way.
Yeah. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to bring that up with him, as long as we're not in the middle of a smear test or something. And
did you spell Elizabeth correctly?
Oh, definitely. So yeah, it was an interesting week, and it went on. Of course, once the evening came, it was about 6 o'clock or something. They announced the death of the Queen, and I was like, fine, it is what it is, and everything. This dark cloud descended on us, and actually, it was bucketing it down here that day. And I went along to Balmoral. I took my mother-in-law, and everyone's under umbrellas, and it was raining. It was real. It was real movie stuff. This is a sad moment. We're going to make it rain. And it was a long couple of weeks waiting for that to smooth over. And then I started jumping up and down and going, hey guys, guess what? And I had accusing emails and rants at me, people who thought that I had written, edited, proofread, printed, delivered this book in that time.
You say that, Suzie. I worked in bookselling when Diana died.
Oh, crikey. Yeah, okay.
And do you remember, I don't know if you remember, but we had and really it was, I think Orion were the first with a tribute, air quotes, book of Diana, where they packaged photos together, and we got hundreds of them in, and they flew out. And they were just, the publishers did turn them around in weeks. These kind of tribute books, and it was.
So they can do it. What you're saying is they can do it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I always remember the story. I always remember the story of Richard Branson before he did his air balloon flight. A crazy one around the world, where he's trying to break the world record. He walked past a van, a TV outside broadcast van. And he saw a guy editing stuff on a screen, and he saw pictures, and it said R.I.P. Richard Branson, and it had like that year's date. And so and this is what they do. They prepare everything in advance. So when somebody actually dies, and in the case of the Queen, that all of that footage would have been prepared for years, and then they just add the very last bit and top and tail it with the fact that she'd passed away, and then they'd be putting it out that evening, because there's no way you could put together all that footage. But the fact that, obviously you weren't preparing for that. It was just incredible timing that it happened right when you were about to put your book out. But it's amazing that I think that's why people probably think, oh, he's just whacked it together and pushed it out. But as people realize now, you just can't do that with a book of your quality. And the research that goes into it is phenomenal. Absolutely.
One thing that I was really proud of was that because of that, there were, in those categories, the royal categories that you mentioned earlier, there were a lot of books about Elizabeth and the Duke of Edinburgh, and all those books all suddenly shot up the charts as well. So to be competing with those as someone who wasn't known was really brilliant.
Yeah. No,
it's a real once in a lifetime, right?
When I was at Headline, we had a book on the Queen Mother. That you're talking about news broadcasters will have that biography ready. We had a book on the Queen Mother that was ready to print, except for the final chapter as well. That had sat for years, ready to go at the last minute. So it is. There is a whole industry behind that.
Whenever I think of the Queen Mum, I always think of the spitting image puppet. Living forever. I'm gonna live forever. Brilliant. Now, As a little preview, we have listeners' questions which we're going to go through in the extended edition of this podcast. But we have a listener question from Jeff White, which we'd love to ask you. What was the moment you felt you'd made it as an author?
Oh, goodness me. There's been some pretty brilliant moments. Pretty brilliant. Those words don't go together, do they, Suzie? Come on, you're a writer. Sort yourself out. It's been
pretty brilliant. It's very British of you, right?
That is right. There have been some amazing moments. The first time I walked into Waterstones and saw a book where it wasn't. I'd seen the book in local bookshops, and it was there because my friends had gone in and said, "Can you stock this book?" And so that's nice seeing it in a bookshop. But walking into Waterstone. I saw the book in foils on the front desk in London, Charing Cross Road, a couple of weeks ago, and that felt pretty damn cool. Just that was a dream come true. I felt that another dream come true was very early on. My publicist had sent a video of the book coming off the printers, and actually to see it there, that was a pretty cool moment. Going down to Goldsboro Books sold a lot, and to go down and sit there and sign those books. And what happened was I had been in signing at the same time as Richard Osman had been in, and his pile of books was sitting there. And as I was signing them, they were being put by his. So I took a photograph of that, as mine were piling up next to his, and made the pile look bigger in the photograph. And actually, the Goldsboro told me that I had far more dedication requests for the book than anyone else had ever had. So that felt really cool. So there's been loads of fun things. Yeah. I have seen that question actually on on the VXP group, and he does mention that bizarre AI biography.
Yes, well, this is it. Jeff's full question this is what I was going to say. What is the moment Suzie felt she'd made it as an author, and why is it when that AI-generated biography of her appeared on Amazon? Now, listeners, I'm going to put a link to this and show it. Don't you dare buy it. But it's a book called Suzie Edge, Biography of the Legend. And I'm just going to read you the blurb here now. The cover is really something to see. Suzie Edge is a captivating and inspiring biography that unveils the extraordinary life of Suzie Edge, a trailblazing figure whose journey of passion and perseverance has left an indelible mark on the world. And what's amazing about this whole blurb is it's effusive, and it doesn't really mention a single tangible fact about you or your career or anything.
Well, I was worried. I opened it thinking there was going to be, what school I went to and, telling everyone my date of birth and all this stuff. I was quite concerned. And when I opened it, not a thing. So part of me was like, got it. And another part of me was like, actually, that's quite good.
We should just explain, for people that aren't in the BXP team who haven't heard about what's happened. One day, randomly, this book appeared on Amazon called Suzie Edge, Biography of Legend. It wasn't obviously written by you, and we then discovered it was written by AI. So when did you first find out? Did you find out about it through someone else, or did you come across it on Amazon? How did it happen?
I had a bit of a school reunion with some old friends. I was down in England and we got together. It was a beautiful day. We were sitting outside a pub and we'd all had quite a lot of cider. And one of my friends pulled my book out of her bag and said, "Can you sign it?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Yeah, I bought it on Amazon. It was next to that weird biography of you." And I was like, "What?" And of course, I thought that because we were all happily under the weather. Yeah, that as well. Happily, we'd had a few.
Refreshed.
Yes. Yeah. That she was just joking, like, haha, because they were all joking. They were all taking the piss out of their old school friend. And I thought nothing of it. And then later on, I did the whole going onto Amazon to see what was happening with the ranking for the new book. And it was there. And I thought, that's kind of me. I say kind of, because the picture, the AI generated picture, which is taken from a bad TikTok video, is just it's priceless. And then I got it in the post. A friend bought it, the hard copy, and sent it in the post to me. So it's on my bookshelf.
Yeah, I saw it on your shelfie.
It's sitting there.
And I've got, I hope you're not too upset, but I haven't actually read it, Suzie, but I'm kind of curious. Obviously, you flick through it. What's inside it? Does it actually say, is it, because this is AI generated, folks. This is something that somebody's just, and what does it say anything about your life in it?
Not absolutely nothing at all. It really just repeats chapter after chapter what Mark just read. It's almost like a tease. It's like, we're going to tell you all this amazing stuff, and uses long words, and it's it does throw up a lot of questions, doesn't it? I mean, how many of those must there be sitting on Amazon? And we have these endless discussions about AI and what it can do, and I use ChatGPT to help me with things, but I certainly haven't written any wild, absolutely empty biographies. But there are words in it. They just, none of them actually talk about me at all.
it's just mad, isn't it? I think for me, the problem with it, massive problem with it, is obviously when you type in Suzie Edge to find your books, it appears like, just below your books. And if somebody's really into you as an author and they buy that book, they're going to be like, what is this? And
yeah, I mean, that would annoy me.
How would you deal with that, though, as the author? Do you have to kind of go out there? Because you don't want to promote it. I mean, we shouldn't really be talking about it. Should we on the podcast? It's going to go into number one.
That sounds good. And, people have messaged me and said, what's this about? And who's this person that's written this book and all that sort of stuff. And I have made a video on TikTok saying just what we've been saying, that it's vacuous nonsense. But yeah, I think that, should I go looking for anything about Mr. James Purefoy? I found a biography and I thought, oh, yeah, I'll get that. And then I found that was in it. I'd probably be a bit annoyed, but I'm not sure I'd go after him for it. But then that's just me. I say that knowing that there are some people out there who probably would get annoyed with me. But, I can't keep everybody happy, can we?
Well, exactly. And it's one of those things that's going to run and run in terms of the conversations about AI and the challenges and the brilliant things that it's going to help authors with as well. But yeah, absolutely fascinating stuff.
I think I would be a little bit more less jokey about it and a little bit more hesitant about it were it to have any information, any personal information. Suddenly if it was talking about my kids or my husband or, as I say, my date of birth or where I went to school or all these things that are personal, I think I might be a bit less jokey about it. But because it's completely empty, I'm just like, okay.
Yeah. Although your husband did appear on a TikTok the other day, I believe, and it was a smash hit. So tell us about that.
He said one word, didn't he?
He said one word. I've always kept him at arm's length because he's not on TikTok, and he wasn't on Facebook for a very long time, and I didn't post pictures of him because I felt that was unfair, and only when he joined Facebook that I thought that was fair game, and so TikTok's the same, and so I don't share things about him on there. Very occasionally I do because and this is maybe a conversation we'll get onto, but very occasionally I do just to shut people off because everyone questions my sexuality because of my hair and my deep voice and my love for rugby, and so those things come up now and again, and I try and dispel those myths, but it just creates more. But the other day somebody had asked a funny question. I think it was does he feel intimidated by his amazing wife? I think that was the question.
Yes.
So I turned the camera around and I went through to him and I said, do you feel intimidated? And he looked up from his book and he went, no, and went back to his book. And that was it. Yeah. And suddenly, thousands of views later, people just wanting more. Well, thanks. 5 years I've been creating on TikTok. He turns up, says one word, scowls at me and goes back to his book, and suddenly he's a star.
Brilliant stuff. Brilliant. Well, listen, folks, we're gonna dive into an extended edition of this podcast where we've got a ton. I think almost marked the most number of listener questions. We actually had to go through the list and edit them, Suzie. This is like how many questions we had. But if you would like to join us on the extended, if you're a member of the Academy or a patron, we're going to be delving a bit more into TikTok and Suzie's incredible success on that. We're going to ask a few questions about how you started out as an author. And also a big question that keeps coming up was this idea of how do you balance writing versus social media? How do you juggle the time? So if you'd like to dive in with us, then pop over to bestsellerexperiment.com/support and sign up to become a patron or the Academy member. And we'll see you on the other side. So welcome, folks, to the extended. And we're going to dive even deeper than we've been before with Suzie. And we've had a ton of listener questions. Thank you so much to everyone who wrote in to ask. As I said, we have so many. We don't know if we're going to get them all done. But Mark, let's fire off question number one.
So first one is from Rachel Chapman, who sent us about 748 questions. Thanks for that, Rachel. Much appreciated. Rachel says, in the early stages of TikTok dominance, what were your fails? And did you ever think of ditching the platform? Now, you said you had been doing it for 5 years. And obviously, any kind of social media, you're experimenting. Things are going to work, things aren't going to work. So what were the mistakes you made? What did you learn from them? And did you ever think of walking away?
I think we touched a little bit on this in the deep dive, didn't we? When we talked about TikTok. There are some things that don't really go down very well. This morning I made a video saying that I was talking to you guys on the podcast. I think it's the word podcast. Whenever I say it the TikTok just doesn't put those videos out there. Really? But I was very excited about the podcast I did this morning and then talking to you guys. So I made that. So, but I know they're not going to go down well, but I also know that some of my audience will see them. And so I still make them. Videos that don't tend to go down well are, at the end of the day, I've written 500 words today. I should have said 2. I've written 200 words today. Those videos don't go down well. Just people without some sort of context or information about what you've written or why or what, they just don't tend to do very well. Educational things that are educational, things that are fun, things that are silly, they all seem to do well. I have at the moment, actually, I really can't complain. Were there any fails? Things have been okay. I don't tend to look at things as fails. At the end of the day, when I had a look the other day and I at my numbers and I had gone over 400,000 followers, I did think I have stood at an FA Cup final at Wembley Stadium with 90,000 people, and that was intimidating. And to make 4.5 times that is just unbelievable. Yeah. And to be honest, standing up in front of a crowd of a couple of thousand people and saying something and then listening to you and talking back and asking questions, that's amazing. So, I don't really feel like there are fails, but certainly there are things that do better than others.
Yeah, it's interesting you say Wembley Stadium or the stadiums, because that's what I always visualize, because they're the biggest areas we've ever been in with the largest amount of people. And when you start to think of the multiples of that, it does completely blow your mind away, doesn't it? It's absolutely, you can't quite, because it's online, you can't quite comprehend, but it's still the same number of people. It's not just because it's online, it doesn't make it any different to having them all packed into a stadium. So
absolutely. People say to me, I've only got a couple of thousand followers. And I think, but imagine what that's like. Yeah. That started actually, comparing to stadiums, that started when I thought about disease and mortality at work. People would say, 90,000 people a year die of this in the UK, and I think that's a whole Wembley Stadium. That's mad. So yeah, and then I'd sort of cut it down into weeks and days. But that's where I start. Is as you say, the big areas that we know, and maybe only a couple of hundred people heard what you had to say. But if you went into a bookshop to do a talk and 200 people turned up, I think we'd all be happy with that.
Be ecstatic, wouldn't you? Absolutely.
2. I mean, I'd be happy if 2 turned up.
Now, Andrea Van Bruggen has asked, how long does it take to make a single video from beginning to end? And she mentions editing, captions and all. Now, I know there's a lot of different types of videos that you do, but like from the kind of average video you do to the kind of fastest and longest videos, what kind of different time scales?
There are some that I just pick the camera up and start talking, and I get to the end, I make sure there are captions. So there's, I think about the accessibility, and then I just fire it out into the world. And there are others that I have to go away and research and look up, and I can spend an enormous amount of time reading, but I don't feel like that's making video stuff. I feel like that's just me doing my thing, reading. I don't take nearly as long as I used to, and I can fire them out quite quickly now because I understand my structure and how it works. There are some videos that I make where I get a piece of paper and I start drawing charts and what have you. Those actually don't take that long because it does come out of my head and nobody believes me, but it's just silly stuff that I know. Don't know where my car keys are. I think I've lost my glasses, but I can sit down and churn this stuff out. And it's fairly quick. But, and when I say fairly quick, I mean it probably half an hour at the most if I'm faffing, which could be thought of as a lot out of your day, but this is what I do. This is my marketing. This is free. This is how I do it. So to me, that's not a huge investment. Having said that comes with the comma. However, I have been doing this for 5 years and therefore I have made it more efficient. Yeah. So, I mean, I can spend a half an hour on a video or an hour at most. If it starts to get more than that, I start to think, is this worth it? Maybe you should go for a run or feed the dog or something.
Or write a chapter in your book about it. I guess there's always that kind of, when it starts to get that deep, right?
Yeah. I mean, there has been, you can tell when I'm procrastinating. There are more videos that go out and they're more elaborate, and they've come out of, because you can film these within the app, or you can go and take it to another app like CapCut and make it more elaborate, and you can tell when I've got a deadline looming because the videos become more elaborate.
I love that you say you procrastinate on social media, because most people procrastinate not putting anything on social media and doing something completely else. So it's great. It's all perspective.
Do you do you sort of try and record one every day, or do you record them in a block and then send them out, or just as they come to you?
Very rarely do I do them in a block. If I've got a Sunday afternoon, perhaps, where it's raining and I just go and sit in my little shed and make some videos. But most of the time, it's just when they come to me. It's whatever the mood takes me. It just works that way. Sometimes I make videos in advance. I will be really efficient. I'll spend an afternoon. I'll create this, that, and the other. And when it comes to a week later to put them out, I think, don't like that. And so it doesn't go out, which is fascinating. I think if I just press play and let it go, and then other people decide whether or not they like it, and I get a nice big dopamine hit from it, then it'll stay. But sometimes I put them. If I do it too far in advance, then I don't like it. But a lot of them are responses to questions, and therefore I just do them as is. And so therefore you can see when I'm away or when I'm not in the mood, there's gaps in my posting schedules. I certainly don't have times a day or anything like that.
Excellent. Let's talk about starting out. Rachel Chapman has a question. If you could go back to when you first thought about putting pen to paper, what advice would you give the younger you?
I'm one of those people who has a number of different 20,000 word manuscripts and screenplays and all sorts of stuff. And reading them is hilarious, because all the screenplays start with the she woke up, she turned off her alarm, she looked at herself in the mirror, the classic, absolute classic. They're hilarious. But I think you have to go through that. Mm-hmm. You have to go through that.
Totally.
And it takes time. And that's Mr. Edge on the phone, who I'm going to, I don't know.
Get him on. He's good for. He's good
like,
for clicks.
I was going to say, is he going? He's like, are we doing a TikTok video now, Suzie?
Sorry, he's still. I don't know. I did tell him what I was doing, but he just doesn't listen. Where was I? So they're all out there, but you have to go through that, don't you? And I think that I might say, don't wait for permission to finish things, because I really feel like the day my agent got in touch with me and said, let's talk fiction or nonfiction, suddenly I had the permission. Yeah. And I just hadn't finished anything and put it out there yet. And I've been trying, and not been trying, I've been fiddling for a long time, and until I had that. But, maybe I needed that. Maybe I can't decide. It would have taken me a hell of a lot longer to get the first book out, but I was on a mission to get it done. I just tell myself to keep at it, because, like I said, that you have to go through all those silly stages, and they're so hilarious to look at now.
Yeah. Well, I think as well, I know that one of your dreams is to write this fiction, write the fiction book as well, and there's something in the pipeline with that. But I think in some ways the way that you've done it, creating a platform as a non-fiction author, I mean, maybe Mark knows more about this, but like going as a successful non-fiction author to a fiction author is probably the better route. Do you think? Who knows? I mean, Mark, you've probably seen that with authors that work in both.
Yeah, I'm trying to. It's definitely happened. I'm trying to rack my brains.
Well, I think of celebrities like Alan Titchmarsh, who brings out all the gardening books, and then writes. I mean, he's obviously got a big name to begin with, but it's less unexpected when somebody who's got an expertise in something writes a non-fiction and then moves to fiction, where it'd be stranger the other way around, I think, or harder to at least build up that following.
Whereas you have a credibility as well. If you're seen as an expert in a particular area, then you bring that credibility to the fiction as well, and people are going to want to read that. So, but at the moment, I'm looking at my bookshelves trying to think of someone who's done that, and I can't think of one. But it has happened.
Well, actually, Kate Harrison, who we interviewed, she started with a million-selling book on diet.
No, she wrote fiction first.
She wrote fiction first. Oh, I didn't realise.
Fiction first, yeah.
Yeah, see, I worry about it. It's a silly thing that goes around in my head, but I have always written fiction. Things haven't really just finished anything, but I do feel like I don't want to I don't want it to just look like I'm going, oh yeah, I'll give that a go, because it's not like that. It's I'll give that a 40-year go. Yeah, should I finish it and get it get a decent job at it? That's so. I feel like I'll be justifying myself the whole time, but I'm still going to go for it because.
Well, there's also the whole pseudonym question as well. When Mark and I put out Back to Reality, I don't know if I said this actually on the podcast, but I purposely called myself Mark Oliver on the book because I wanted to save Mark DeVoe for nonfiction. And Mark, you remember this conversation, didn't you? I was like, it was a deep dive on that, but a lot of authors and Joe Hill didn't want to have the association with his dad, so he didn't use the word king, and so there's always the opportunity to start from scratch if you really wanted to do that.
There definitely is, but at the same time, I feel like I do have a bit of a brand, and
well, exactly.
My fiction work is on brand.
That's what I was going to ask. Tell us about that. So you're actually going to be bringing in all of your love of history into these fiction books, is that right?
Yeah, I've been scrabbling around at the beginning of the 19th century, digging up bodies as a body snatcher, and the medical side of things. And I studied medicine in a fabulous old anatomy department, and things like that. I just want to bring all that together. So that definitely is on brand, and so I think I would be nuts to then suddenly become Elizabeth Thompson, because why not use what I've built and what I've got? And I find it a bit strange when you see books and it says the author's pseudonym written by Suzie. I think, well, what, are you going to choose or do it or don't do it? Which one is it? Because they're wanting to use that platform that they've got, and that makes sense to me to use that. Were I to go off and play with other things, and I have been writing more as another project, modern medical thriller, perhaps that might be worth thinking about. But I don't think I'd go far. I think I'd probably use my Sunday name or something, Suzanne or something, Yeah.
Or if you did choose a pseudonym, Elizabeth, you could then have fun with the fonts and working on that H,
and not write it properly. Really wind people up.
Yeah, totally. Leave the H off, Elizabeth. Now, Laura Shepherd and Jackie Kirkham, I both had a similar question. They wanted to know about how you juggle your time. Jackie wanted to know specifically, how disciplined are you in terms of organising your time, and what percentage of your time do you spend writing and making videos?
So here's the thing. When I wrote the first book, Mortal Monarchs, I would get up in the morning and really early before the kids got up, and I'd jump in a cold shower, and I'd take all the supplements that I was meant to take, and I'd probably go for a run, and I'd do this amazing morning routine, and I'd sit down at a desk and I'd do this, and then I'd do that, and then I'd do something else, and then I'd stop for lunch for an hour, because my husband actually works at home as well, and he takes an hour break because of the nature of his work. So I would stop for lunch with him, and maybe then take the dog for a walk at 3, and everything was just like bang, 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 and it felt brilliant, and I felt I was really fit, getting fitter, and I felt amazing, and the book was really coming along well, and I have not been able to recreate that. I don't know where it's gone, and I think where it's gone is the fact that there's so much else. I'm just dealing with 24 emails a day about publicity stuff, and can you do this and can you do that, and have you got this date in your diary, and can you be here on that day, and can you organize that, and so all these other things thrown in, and suddenly I'm finding it an awful lot harder.
I know authors successful authors who deal with that, who basically say, I would do that in the afternoon. I'm not doing it in the morning.
I'm not very good at getting up in the morning. I scowl at Mr. Stay's tweets if they go out early saying I've written 2,000 words this morning, because I'm like, really, I've had 2,000 coffees, competition, still sitting in my bed. So I find that very, very difficult. There are some days, I've got up and started early, and I thought this is a revelation, and I've not been able to recreate it. I think it's just not my thing. I'm more of a into the evening, under the sort of table lamp, dark otherwise, and with a little whiskey by me or something. I'm more into that, because I can't get away with that at 5 o'clock in the morning, apparently.
Well, it doesn't stop some people, I guess. But the thing about the number of followers you now have on TikTok, I mean, it's only going to keep getting bigger. How much time do you spend responding to comments? Because is that like take more time than actually creating the videos?
Yeah, that is my morning routine now. I get up and say the kids go to school really early because they're like an hour away. And I then take a coffee back to bed and I sit there and I, if my husband comes in and says, well, are you going to get up? And I'm like, no, I'm working, darling.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But I am working that community and responding. And I do have to control myself because at that time in the morning, I'm not always the friendliest. And if somebody winds me up with a comment that's going to make me bark back, I have to control myself. So I am very much aware that time of day might not be the best time in terms of, telling someone to say, well, it's going to end in off anyway.
H off.
I have to control that. So that, that's when I do it. And it usually takes about an hour. So that's an hour. It's an hour at least a day when I am cultivating
really
my field of, it does. But that's what's worked. That's what's done it. There's no posting and running and then having some sort of success at the end of it.
So you believe that interaction bit is what makes it grow and work? It's not just putting the videos out then?
Hugely, yeah. And there's a lot of questions that I answer as well. Where can I buy your book? Is it available in America? So those things actually I like to answer because people suddenly like, oh, you answered. I'm like, yeah, of course I answered. Go buy the book now. So those things have worked as well. So yeah, I make sure I'm on that. But as I said, it's not all daisies and sunflowers and nicey. There's some pretty abusive stuff that comes through. And first thing in the morning, I'm not always ready to deal with that. Yeah. I did call somebody a cockwomble once, and then he said, sorry, my mistake. I got the king wrong. And I sort of offered to make him a virtual cup of tea. And we were chatting by the end of the day, and he went, I've bought your book, by the way.
See, there's always a silver lining. There's always a silver lining.
Indeed, yeah. But yeah, in terms of routine, I'm not I'm not on it at the moment, but no.
Oh, it's hard though, isn't it? I mean, honestly, I know people don't really talk about this much, but when I coach people, we talk about how can you become successful in what you're doing. And then I have to coach people in how to deal with success, because success brings a load more challenges. The phone doesn't ring to begin with, but then it's like, what opportunities do you turn down when you get all these different offers for different things? So yeah, I think it's a whole different world, and people don't really fully appreciate like how hard that can be, but it's a good problem to have.
Yeah, it is a good problem to have. Right. I'm certainly not complaining. I get a lot of requests to go to events and I just can't because, were I in London, I could jump on the tube and be there at this event. There's one tonight. And I can't do it because it takes me 3 or 4 days to get to London, and it costs me hundreds of pounds a go to fly there or get the train and then stay overnight. It costs me a lot of money. So there's a lot of things that I have to say no to. But because we are in the we're in the Patreon section, aren't we?
Yes.
So I'll admit this. I have a PA who is amazing and efficient, and she answers all my emails very matter of fact and efficiently. She doesn't get chatty. She just does the job, get it done. She's called Tilly, and she's completely made up. Yeah. She has her own email address, and it comes through to me when people fill in the form on my website, to chat. Those emails all go to Tilly, and Tilly responds, and people then don't get chatty. And one of the problems that I have is that people are they want to just chat and be pally, and I can't think of the words. They're just the access people feel that they have sometimes is too much. Yeah. And I can't deal with it. I can't make everybody happy. And I went through a big stage where I just wasn't replying to people because I thought I don't have another hour in my day to get into these conversations, which is a real shame, but I don't have it. And people suddenly they sort of turn up in Scotland and they're like, come and do this thing with us. And I'm like, I'd love to, but I have to take my children to school today because I do have these other things that I do with my life. I'd love to do everything, but I can't. And Tilly, as I say, is completely made up PA, but she does a great job.
There was an actor who did that, wasn't there? There was an actor who made up an agent or something who would deal with those kind of requests. I'm trying to think who it was now. What's his name? In Paddington 2 and Notting Hill and Four Weddings and a Funeral. Hugh Grant.
Huge Grant.
He's got he made up a PA who would deal with all those queries. So it's
I didn't actually make up, but I when I got booked at Glastonbury, I rang Glastonbury as the band's agent because no one else. I was the band's agent, the band's record label manager. I scrubbed the dishes and I also made some of the music and because I knew that if I spoke to them as, oh, so I'm in a band, we'd love to play, and like, don't. But the funniest bit was after we played Glastonbury, the guy that books us, who was like this legend, they've named a whole section in Glastonbury after him now, Malcolm. I went up to him afterwards and I said, just wanted to thank you for this opportunity. And he's like, weren't you on stage? I'm like, yeah, I'm also the agent. And then we had a good laugh about it. And then he booked us again next year. So it all worked out well. But then the other thing, of course, Suzie, it kind of gets to a point where, I mean, when things get really successful, where maybe, people start considering PAs. I mean, I have a PA that helps. I couldn't do all the stuff with the Academy, and I have almost a full-time PA with the Academy just helping with that. So, but she's not in the UK. She's absolutely brilliant. She's over in the Philippines and she's fantastic. And I couldn't do what I did without her. So I think there comes a point as well where when it just becomes, so you can kind of almost graduate to that next point where it is a real person doing it, but she's got all the templates from you, which is absolutely brilliant.
It feels like that's coming, but I do love the way people talk to Tilly. They are just, it's so different. You see the emails that I get compared to the emails that she gets. And it was Mike Craven, his books. I was just reading one of his books one day and my main character is called Tilly. And I was like, well, she's pretty efficient. She gets the Tilly. And then I gave her my maiden name, which is Thompson. And my brother goes, that's my dog's name, Tilly Thompson. So, well, fine. But yeah, people talk to her differently.
Tilly Thompson is a very, very believable publishing name, actually.
Isn't it?
Love it.
I've known a few Tilly Thompsons in publishing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and like them, I pay her pittance. So
I know. It's shocking, isn't it?
I'm an awful boss. Yeah, it works. It's worked for me in terms of, and it's not about credibility. It's not like she's emailing people going, oh, well, I'm Suzie's PA. It's not about that. It's just about having a barrier between me and a lot of people that want to talk to me all the time. I've had 3 advice requests from students today.
Just today.
And they are very long because they take a long time and they tell me all their whole story. And yeah.
And
are they asking you to do? Are they asking you to write their essays yet? Are you getting?
Yeah, not quite.
No, ChatGPT does that for them. Now, Jackie says, has the reality of being a full-time author lived up to your expectations?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't have any money, but that it really has. A very long time ago, I was having a conversation with a medical friend, I suppose, who was head of a department in the hospital. We were talking about careers. I was talking about where I was going to go. I hadn't settled on a specialty. I was interested in going into that particular specialty. And he said, what do you really want to do? And the first answer that came out of my mouth was kind of flippant, but I guess it came from a deep-rooted desire. I said, I just want to run away to the hills and write books. And his answer threw me. He said, why? I thought, it really threw me because I thought, doesn't everyone want to do that? But, I live in the hills and I write books and it just does feel great. I very much control my time and I decide what I'm going to do mostly until that publicist has been on the emails again. But mostly I can't get enough of that at the moment. It feels I can't put it into words. It really has lived up to my expectations. One of these days, there's going to be a massive paycheck, isn't there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean,
you paused. You both took far too long to answer that. Yeah, to be fair, I have been earning from going to festivals and the like and talking and doing all that sort of thing. I have been. But there are other, when I was talking about the events earlier, it tends to be other people's publicity events. So come along to this. And it would be great. You can go and network and do all those things and be there and talk to people. And, it makes a difference in some ways. But yeah, it costs me hundreds of pounds each time. And then, I did go to an event where I thought I was there to talk work collaboration, and when I got there, it very much turned out that I was there as an influencer, and I couldn't get out there quick enough. It was hard work, and because some people were shaking my hand and going, "Oh, you're the influencer," and walking off, and I thought, that's all. There's a bit more to me than that. And then others were, I don't know. I didn't feel involved. I felt like I was just there because they wanted me to make a video to show off their thing. And they say, "Oh, but you can. We've got champagne. We're going to give you champagne." I'm like, I have champagne. I have some. I can open the bottle. Like it's not.
I can't pay the electricity bill with champagne.
Exactly.
I
can't. And so I really have to think hard about what I'm going to go to and what I'm going to. But you know what? There's two things actually that I want to add to that. One is I'm definitely not complaining about what I've been paid in the advance. It has actually been quite nice. But the other thing, of course, is that I am very much aware that I say that flippantly. I say, "Oh, I don't have any money," but I am able to do what I do because my husband has a job and has a good job, and I get it. I can do that.
I think with all of this, it's the momentum that builds. Like you've seen what's happened with TikTok. The same is going to be happening, and it is happening with your publishing career now. And we're always in this different curve of everything, but it's always an exponential curve if we keep on plugging away at it and it keeps on growing. And only good things will come from that. So I'm really excited. I'm really excited as to where this goes. I mean, the TV series, you know where it's going. I could totally, I'll say this now, Suzie, we're talking amongst friends. I could totally see you having your own TV series on the BBC. I mean, I don't know if that's something you'd want to do, but I could totally see that happening. You've probably even been approached to do that, and you probably can't tell us about it, have you?
I've actually been approached quite a lot, and from the very start. Right. Some things come to fruition and others don't, and some take longer and others and I'm just hopeful one day that something will come along. I actually wonder whether that's something I need to develop and push myself now, because I do get approached and then it's, actually I was approached once not so long ago, and somebody said, "Oh, we want to make this was a production company, said, "We want to do this with your book," and my agent said, "Well, you have to pay for it then." And they ran away. So there's been a few instances like that, and it will come, something will come, and I actually do have ideas in that regard, but again, we come down to how many hours in the day. I do have some ideas.
It is important though, I think, when you're dealing with TV people, that you take ownership of the idea, and more so than with publishing and anything else, you have to dig your heels in. You have all the power until you sign the document. You have to be very difficult. I'm speaking from bitter experience. You have to be very, very difficult with TV and film people because they will take liberties because they have all the cash and make these things. So, yeah. And
I've gone beyond the point now where I'm going to be going along to something because it's exposure.
Exactly.
Yes. I've been exposing myself for a while now.
Far too long.
As you say, exposure doesn't pay the electricity bill.
Yeah, really doesn't.
Well, folks, I think we should probably wrap up the extended mark, as we've got we've got a lot more to cover, and obviously we want to be respectful of your time because of all the exposure you're having to do, Suzie. I mean, it goes right. Although this is different. This goes on
YouTube, right?
Absolutely, yeah. No, this one isn't. So thank you everyone for supporting the extended. Again, thank you for Suzie for spending this extra time with us. We're going to be jumping back into some more exciting chat about her new projects that are coming out as well. So we'll see you on the other side. So, folks, if you missed the extended, it was absolutely fascinating. But we want to talk quickly before we dive into social wins and media about fiction might be coming along the pipeline, Suzie.
No, I'm not telling you anything about that. I'm going to keep that under my head.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a tease, wasn't it? Do you know, I've been this started with fiction. This idea of producing fiction work. It's historical for me. It's Georgian underworld, body snatching and medicine and all the goo and guts and gore and stuff that I love to talk about. And I can't get enough of all that. Funnily enough, actually, I read not so long ago, probably about 6 months ago, read a couple of books by an author we're not going to name, and I became disheartened. I didn't look at them and think that was amazing. I want to be able to do that. I looked at it and thought that was amazing. I could never do that. And I put it away and haven't looked at it and thought, well, you know what, the nonfiction stuff's going okay. And I see the nonfiction work as my day job, which it is, because, I have those contracts in place and I do work kind of 9 to 5 on those. And therefore I have that. Do I get this out in the evening? Do I start before I do the other stuff? Or, so there's that going on with the fiction projects. But I was having a conversation with another author friend not so long ago who said the same thing to me. He said, I've just read a book which just blows me out the water and I feel a bit down about it. And my answer to him was, well, that's just silly because your book was fantastic and we're different. And actually, if we go about thinking that everything we read that other people has created is not as good as what we can do, not as good as what we can do. It's worrying, isn't it? But do you know what I mean? Like if everything we read we think ours is better, then we're just being
we'd never write anything. And also you're doing that thing of reading a book that has had many drafts, has been tackled by editors, copy editors, proofreaders, all that kind of thing.
And we know that, but we still beat ourselves up.
Yeah.
Having said that, I got the book out a couple of weeks ago. I sent it as a PDF and read it on Kindle app, and I thought, for most part, there's something here, and this is all right, and I'll get this out again. So it's been rekindled. You do that, don't you? You put things away and come back to them, and you see them in a very different light.
Very, very different light.
Very different. What you have got coming, though, that we can really talk about are these fantastic sounding children's books coming from Hachette. So the History Stinks books. So History Stinks Pooh Through the Ages coming in April 24. History Stinks We Through the Ages coming in April 25. And then A Hole in the Head, A Gruesome Grisly History of Medical First coming in September 25. It's fantastic. This is brilliant. So how much can you tell us about these?
Yeah, well, they got in touch with me and we had a very long chat about body fluids. And I have found the first one was on edit round 2 at the moment. I have found it really hard. And the reason I found it really hard is because I realized when I was writing it that suddenly my sense of humor with my raised eyebrows or my innuendo or my sarcasms perhaps weren't suited to writing for 8, 9, 10-year-olds. And I had to think differently and not rein myself in, but certainly think differently. And that's been really, really hard. I'm not going to lie, I found that quite tough. Not least because I had a head injury the last month, so it's been quite hard quite hard to tell silly jokes when you're sitting there with a sore head.
Here's a silly joke though, Suzie. Here's a silly joke for you. If you're finding the poo hard, you definitely should try some laxatives. Sorry.
Thanks, Doc.
Was that part of your stand-up routine?
That's going to be woefully in line with my stand-up routine. So I was chatting with Suzie the other day, and sorry.
Yeah, that's been really tricky, but at the same time has been fun because it's been a new thing, a new challenge, and so this is Pooh Through the Ages. So we're lifting toilet lids and having a look down sewers and talking about the first flushing toilets and all that sort of stuff. And the second one, it's called We Through the Ages at the moment, but I worry that I'm not going to be able to put out 25,000 words about we. So perhaps that's going to be some sort of bodily fluids. But again, I can't think of a way to put it because there's no book for 8-year-olds that's going to be called bodily fluids through the ages.
It has to be we in the title, doesn't it? I think it's absolutely genius because it just totally hits every 8-year-old's world. I mean, poo and wee is where it's at, right? It's great.
And the number of adults that have said, yeah, never mind the kids.
Well,
exactly.
Totally.
Yeah. First in line for that one. Yeah.
Bedtime reading is going to be hysterical. Absolutely hysterical. I love it. I think, looking into my crystal ball, they're not coming out till next year. But you mentioned that it's already up on Amazon. I've seen it on Amazon and it's already selling. This is 7 months before it's even out. It's absolutely brilliant. No pressure. Yeah, no pressure, Suzie.
Speaking of pressure, you're doing a talk at Alnwick Castle, I saw. on October the 20th. Now, I'm sure I've bored everyone on the podcast about this previously. I almost wrote a book with the Duchess of Northumberland about 15 years ago. It was like 2008 or something like that. So if you see her, say Mark Stay says hello, and she'll be completely blank. It was going to be a series of books about the set around the poison gardens, and but they went with another author. Basically, what happened is Twilight happened, because I was going to write a sort of adventure story. Then Twilight happened. They wanted to make it a romance, so they went with an American in the end. Yeah, but yeah, do say hello. And Alnwick Castle's amazing venue. Should be magical, absolutely magical.
Yeah, that's a weird, very weird story, family connection. I'll tell you, you can cut it out if you like. But
I'm not good. Do it.
Do it. Okay. So my father was very much into family history and tracing family stuff, and did all of that. And I am to an extent, but I looked at my mother's side of the family, and he did all his side. And he was talking to people online. He'd done the gene analysis, and he was talking to family members and sharing photographs of his uncles and cousins and all the rest of it with people that are around still today. And I got an email, strangely, from someone who follows me on TikTok, who I had these early morning coffee conversations with about history on TikTok. And she said, I realize that this is going to sound weird, because we've been talking about history on TikTok, random person, never met before. But I think we might be related, because I was looking for this guy that I was having this conversation with, and he suddenly stopped talking to me, and I don't know what happened, but I'm a bit worried about what happened to him. So I went looking for him, and I think it might be your dad, because my dad died suddenly a few years ago and stopped talking to her. So I think that might be your dad. And I was like, yep, that's him. So we and she's got family, and they're all from the northeast. And say the northeast sounds strange to me, because I'm from the northeast of Scotland. This is northeast of England. So we all just started talking, and a couple of them are involved with Alnwick, and said, "Look, you've got to come."
Yeah.
So there's a bit of a weird family connection going on, but it was a very strange one. So yeah, TikTok led me to family members who, and she started sending me photographs back that my dad had sent to her that I'd never seen before, because he'd been sharing it. I hadn't been sharing it. She's like, by the way, this is your dad and his cousin when they were 4 and stuff like that. So that's pretty cool.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What an incredible story.
Those connections seem to be happening more and more, and people recognizing me more and more is nice. But that was ace.
Bonkers. Brilliant. Well, Suzie, we are so grateful for you spending this time with us today. And we're also so completely excited, to have seen your journey so far, and even more excited about where it's all going to go as well in the future. So remember, folks, Suzie's book is out on the 28th of September, Vital Organs. You can get it pre-order on Amazon if you listen to this the week before, if it might be out by the time you listen to this. And also Mortal Monarchs as well, smash hit. And then the children's books are out starting April next year as well. Now, Suzie, one really important question that we've got a lot of people want to know. Obviously, you've got a website where people can go and check you out, and the website address is SuzieEdge.com. Great. And just in case, if anyone else is interested, is there anywhere on socials that you do that they can check you out on at all?
I'm quite shy on socials. I don't really do that much, but I do turn up now and again on TikTok. At Suzie
really?
Edge. Yeah.
Why didn't you say that?
I must check that out. Brilliant stuff.
Have a look. And on Twitter at Suzie Edge as well, and on Instagram at Suze.edge. I play about on all of those as well.
Fantastic. Well, Suzie, thank you so much. And thank you for inspiring everyone, not just in the BXP team, all the authors on there through what you've achieved, but also, everyone out there who's maybe thinking, oh, I've wondered about starting a TikTok channel or maybe starting a book, about something that they're passionate about. So absolutely brilliant. And we just want to wish you every success in the future. And we'd love to have you back on. I'd see how the children's series goes. I think, Mark, that might be next.
Absolutely. No, it's fantastic.
Your support as well has been absolutely amazing. I just keep hearing my name all the time on your podcast. We've been just so nice hearing you go through that journey with me, to be honest. It's been great. So thank you so much for that.
Oh,
we're so made up. We're so excited.
It's our honour. It's our honour. Brilliant stuff, Suzie. Thank you. What are your writing dreams? Finishing that book, quitting the day job, becoming a best-selling author? Well, over 4 years, we've studied the advice of over 300 best-selling authors who've collectively sold over 500 million books. And we are excited to announce the Bestseller Academy. If you're ready to take your writing to the next level with accountability, craft, and coaching, your bestseller dreams are now only a click away. To find out more and apply, visit bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. That's bestsellerexperiment.com/academy. So, Mark, let's talk about socials and the wins this week.
So on the 200 words a day challenge, we had a lovely note from Sheila Crosby. Sheila's been one of those people. She's on Twitter at Sheila Crosby 403. Every day there with me, logging her 200 words. And she says, I finished the first draft of Happily Ever After. Love that title.
Great title.
I'm gonna ignore it for a month so I can reread with fresh eyes. Meanwhile, I'm writing pirate stories, 350 words today. See, that's how you do it, folks.
Yeah.
Bank it, get it in there and move on to something else.
Sounds to me like that book needs to be out by Easter.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And on the Academy, Katie Wells, she's only been here a couple of days, and she says she's had a cover reveal already for her book, A Blend of Magic, which looks absolutely brilliant. It's the sort of thing, if you like Witches of Woodville, I think you might like A Blend of Magic. So I'll put a link in the show notes for that. She said, it's my cover reveal for A Blend of Magic, had lots of positive feedback and a few pre-orders, which weren't from friends. So a huge win. That, I mean, you were talking earlier, Suzie, about the fact that when you started seeing your book in shops that your friends hadn't put there. It's a big milestone, isn't it, when you realise there's life outside your friend circle.
It's huge. Well done. It feels really great. Great.
And then we've had
I just say before we dive in, I've got to say something about Katie, which is absolutely brilliant. When we did the Academy kind of like an open evening, and actually Katie came to that, the first thing that she told me, and Mark and I were doing this together, the first thing she told me is she said, I said, oh, because she mentioned that she likes to write witchy stories and things like that. And I said, oh, have you heard about Mark Stay's like witch book? Oh, and she said, I've got them all here. And she had them on her shelf. And I'm like, Mr. Stay, you've made it. You've got fans everywhere, Mark. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
She's been very supportive, actually, very supportive.
She's lovely, yeah.
Fantastic, yeah. And we have a public declaration from Steve Gowland. Steve, fantastic fancy offer, writes as S.C. Gowland. So he says, I will complete The Midnight Warriors in time for its release date, 26th of January, 2024. Gulp, ... Now, the thing is, Steve, not only has he announced a release date, it's up for pre-order on Amazon as well. Amazing cover too. Really, really cool cover. And again, I'll put a link in the show notes. Yeah, good luck, Steve. You've announced the date, and Amazon, if you miss that date, they get very cross. So you've got to make it. Go for it.
That is the ultimate dream declaration, isn't it? It's not just like telling us about it and getting it in the legendary Mr. Stay diary. It's actually whacking it up on Amazon with the release. I mean, there's no holding back. So maybe, okay, what do we call that, Mark? We have to give that, or maybe Suzie, what kind of ninja level kind of dream declaration is that when you actually literally publish it on Amazon?
Well, it's got to be, you said ninja level there, it's got to be black belt, hasn't it?
Black belt dream declaration. Thank you very much. Excellent. There you go.
So thanks everyone for sending that in. If you have any wins, you can find us on social media. Get in touch. So we are on Facebook, Bestseller Experiment, Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. We are at Bestseller XP. Are you on Threads yet, Suzie? Are you doing Threads? Yeah.
Yes. I keep forgetting that it's there.
Yeah, but me too.
Every so often I do go on there and see the same people that I see on Instagram. But,
Yeah, exactly. And I've managed to get on Blue Sky as well. And it's one of these things.
You got a code.
I got a code. I should try and get some for Bestseller Experiment as well.
Do you know that's how Gmail started off? Codes.
Yeah,
if you remember that, Gmail started off where you had to get an invite, and you got like 10 invites. I got to say, we're talking with a historian here, so I'm future casting myself 50 years in the future. And like, no one's going to have heard of any of these social media sites. Like, none of them are going to be around. We'll change names, or we'll probably all be doing it through AI, brain chips or something. And there won't even be an interface that we have to look at. But it's fascinating, isn't it? I'm curious. I'm very curious as to who's going to win, because they can't all these different social media sites can't all be with us in a couple of years from now.
We'll all just have a big chip in our brain in a few years. Don't worry, it's coming. So yes, do drop us a line there, folks. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, if you've been inspired by Suzie and the authors that we've had on the show, give us a rating, subscribe to us, give us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And thanks as always to our editors, Dave and JD.
Yeah, and just a quick reminder, folks, Suzie's been supporting this podcast for donkey's years as a patron, so we are very, very grateful. So if you want to be like Suzie, pop along to bestsellerexperiment.com/support, get all of the extra goodies. I also just want to mention as well, to remind people that if you are interested, if you've been inspired by Suzie today and you are interested in writing a non-fiction book, I'm going to be doing this over the next, I say year, 12 to 14 months. And you can join me in the Bestseller Academy in writing your nonfiction book. We're going to be going through this together, folks. You're going to be getting life coaching from me, and you're going to be getting nonfiction coaching from the amazing Kate Harrison, who's sold over 1 million books. So if you'd like to find out more about that, pop along to academy.bestsellerexperiment.com. And there's also the 200-word challenge. Suzie, did you toyed with the 200-word challenge in your time?
Yes. However, like diet and exercise and everything else, I get about 4 days in, and then I don't write every day.
It's hard though, isn't it? And that's why we have the challenge. So if you want to join that, it's 200wordchallenge.com. Our challenge to everyone out there is, can you write consecutively 200 words for 7 days? And if you can do that, then you might be onto a bit of momentum. And it isn't as easy as it sounds, folks, as Suzie testifies, as I know. Mark, I think you pretty much cracked it, haven't you, a few years back?
Yeah, but it's all I do.
I know.
I might interject actually and say that I probably do in terms of creating online content for TikTok and all the rest. I probably do that. Yeah. So I do that every day, every single day.
Yeah. We all text more than 200 words a day if you count them up. It's quite
WhatsApp.
amazing. Yeah, exactly, right? Writing bloody novels on text and WhatsApp, but we got nothing on the other end of it. Brilliant stuff. Yeah. Well, again, thank you so much, Suzie, for being with us. Absolute delight to have you with us, and we look forward to having you back on very, very soon. And so it's a goodbye from Suzie.
Goodbye.
And it's a goodbye from Mark 1.
And goodbye from Mark 2.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Zoom wave, everyone. Zoom wave.
Zoom wave.